So Steam is not inherently against NFTs. What their problem is they want to take their cut. They don't want you to have some kind of SDK integration that allows you to circumvent the Steam payment page so that they don't get the cut from the game that they're promoting to their audience. So one idea that we're toying with, and we're still talking to Steam about whether this will be allowed, but I would love for somebody who's interested in taking that transition to go through the Steam payment flow and buy an NFT, paying in fiat money through Steam payments. Sure, Steam will take their 30% cut, but then the user would then be redirected to the website and say like, hey, you've just paid for this in fiat and that's comfortable. Now go and check out your asset. By the way, if you ever get tired of it, you can sell it for crypto. And at the point that the user wants to sell it for crypto, they become forced to kind of learn what it's all about, because that's how they kind of recoup their investment.
This is the 100X podcast. We are joined by Jojo from Castles of Blackwater. He's the founder and CEO. I'm excited, man. We have been seeing your game running around the Web3 space for a hot minute. You guys are either the most popular social deduction game in Web3 or maybe the only one. I don't know if there's any others. Sorry to everyone that I'm shading. If you've built one, you're not on my timeline. Welcome, Jojo. Tell me about Castles of Blackwater, what you've built, what you've crafted, what's going on in that world.
Thank you for having me. Definitely not the only social deduction game in the space, but doing pretty well marketing-wise.
So we just shaded somebody.
Yeah, maybe. But you know, most popular, we'll see. Time will tell. Thank you for having me on the space today. I'm here representing Castle of Blackwater as the co-founder and CEO. And to give you a quick, brief introduction, Castle of Blackwater is a 2D social deduction game that pays to betray, we like to say. It is loosely inspired from concepts like Among Us, which is a game that everybody knows.
Yep.
But we always thought that Among Us lacks a lot of replayability and like some strategic elements. So we've taken inspiration from other games like Town of Salem, Trouble in Terrorist Town, Deceit, maybe some people know that. And we've really added in a lot of complexity and depth that change the way that the game is played. I always like to say that our game has many, many different layers. It has different factions, abilities, timelines, etc. And it's one of those games that is reasonably easy to pick up. You'll need like a game or two to really get the hang of it. But then every time you come back, you're going to learn a new mechanic, a new trick that's going to help you uncover new secrets and new play styles. And yeah, that's what keeps people coming back for more every other week.
Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Let me tell you about our friends at games.gg. And when I say friends, I really do mean that they are friends of 100X. Their CEO, Omar, was one of my first introductions to Web3 gaming, and we're OG holders of their Gamers Lobby collection. We love these guys. They're essentially the super app of Web3 gaming. One of the cool things they've cooked up is a gaming quest system. You complete free quests for cool games, anything from retweeting a post to beating a mission in a new game, and then you get rewards, tokens, skins, whitelist access, all kinds of things. Currently, they have active quests for Boss Fighters, Space Mavericks, in the Game Awards 2024. Go slam those quests for free at games.gg right now. Yeah, man, from my perspective, as someone who plays a lot of games, I saw like Among Us crossed with like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. That's not even a video game. That's like a card game, board game-esque. Played that a long time ago. And there was just a lot more to it. I grew up playing Mafia, which was like the OG social deduction game.
100%.
Dude, I got memories at like 6 years old playing that with my big family. And that was always so much fun. Getting to like, it's the one time as a kid I was allowed to lie. And so getting to lie and stab your friends in the back and have some fun playing a game. But like you mentioned with Among Us, Mafia was pretty shallow. Like there's not a lot of depth to it. Once you've played it 10 times, you've played it 10 times. And I remember playing that werewolf game and thinking, oh, cool. Like there's roles, like you're actually being someone other than a mafia or a citizen, which is from my perspective where you guys have innovated is allowing a lot more to happen for each player. Break that down a little bit. What does that look like as far as like adding more depth that maybe some social deduction games have missed out on?
So one game that I used to play a hell of a lot when I was younger is called Town of Salem, which was a big inspiration. And you'll see that in the more kind of werewolf-esque games is as soon as you add like intricate roles and strategies to these games, what you tend to trade off is that freedom of movement and the excitement that you get. So on the one hand, you have Among Us where you're like free to move and you're doing tasks and mini games, which is super fun, but then you lack all of the complexity. And on the other hand, you have the complexity and the strategy, but you lack the freedom of movement and that really thrilling effect. And we thought, let's add those two together and see what you get. And that's kind of what Castle of Blackwater has become. It's a game where currently 10 strangers meet in a castle. Two of those will be satanic players. They're the evil character. They will know of each other who the other evil character is. Everyone else would be the protector character. They're the good guys going around doing tasks, except for one other person who will be a werewolf. And the werewolf in our game is like they belong to the Forgotten faction. They are chaotic neutral, kind of playing their own game. They can win or lose independently of the main game being played between protectors and satanic, and they really add a touch of chaos and confusion to the whole experience. What we've then done is we've given every single player a unique role with a unique ability, and that really influences your playstyle. So every time you come back to play, you get a new role, and one time you'll be the lumberjack who will be focusing on grinding these mini games and getting XP. Another time you'll be the sheriff who can see bloody footsteps, so you'll be really focused on solving the murderers. Other roles will give you some secret knowledge or insight, so you're in the safe zone, putting together the pieces of the puzzle. We really like the Town of Salem concept of like a day and night cycle followed by a voting round. We feel like that creates a level of structure that sometimes gets lost in among us when you find a body and you go to the voting round. It's all very sudden and it's not very fluid. So in our game, you really have to wait for the voting round. You can find a dead body, but that doesn't mean that the night ends, and it only adds to that
still
thrill
trapped in the night.
Exactly. And one of the coolest things, so you start in the day cycle, right? And everybody's out doing these tasks. And then 3 minutes later, day turns to night and everybody gets a choice. Do you try to survive the night in the castle, keep doing tasks, bonus XP, etc., but run the chance of running into the werewolf? Or do you go to the safe zone, which is like a whole separate area? Nobody can kill you, no tasks. But there we've created these special tools that will allow you to start uncovering the mystery of the puzzle. One of my favorite tools, we call it the Challenger log. It's kind of like an interactive pin board with all of the faces and the roles. And you can literally drag and drop like all the pins. And that really makes you feel like a bit of a detective. We also have a notebook there that lets you see the voting log, etc., etc. So lots of discussion and deduction happens in that safe zone. But if you decide to stay out in the castle at night, that's when you might run into the werewolf. And at that point, I'm really happy with like the soundscape that we've made and the atmosphere that we've built. Imagine you're running around this castle at night. It's really dark, so your visibility is limited. And all of a sudden you hear this like really echoing wolf's howl in the area. And on your mini-map, you'll see like a little werewolf icon appearing, heading towards your direction. And every time he picks up like a certain thing, he refreshes his UAP and he's kind of like hunting you while you're trying to escape.
Chasing you down.
That level of thrill, you don't often get that in a social deduction game that focuses also on strategy and complexity.
Yeah, you almost blend like the horror thriller genre with it at the same time.
Exactly. And that unique combination of thriller, excitement, but also at the same time strategy and kind of being able to pick and choose, like, do I want to go for the thrills or do I want to play it safe and strategize? That's what I think opens our game up to a very wide player base of social deduction fans.
Yeah, that's sweet. That is an entirely new dynamic. It's exciting. It's gritty. It's fun.
It's very
terrifying.
Exciting.
What is I've got a question just on topic. Your favorite faction to play and maybe your favorite individual character to play also?
Great question. It really depends. You have to know that I've played this game like 10,000
like 1,000
hours.
times, yeah.
Like so much. So I've gotten to the point where I no longer have a favorite and I'll just appreciate every character for what it is. Of course, a lot of people will say that the werewolf is arguably one of the more fun characters, especially since we've kind of been tweaking and evolving him to become really fun. I'm going to say that I prefer protectors because as much as people say that I'm really good at playing satanic and lying because I understand the game, I actually really hate it. And people who know me well will notice like a big shift in my character. When I'm protector, I'm super loud. I'm calling people out. I'm calling the shots. When I'm satanic, I kind of collapse into myself because
You're like,
I'm scared.
Man, I don't want to be this guy. I want to be the hero.
Exactly. So I'm kind of like silent, like mysterious. And that's usually a big tell for people who play with me often. But among the protector roles, my favorite role is probably someone, well, it has to be the vigilante. The vigilante is a protector character. He's the only one.
He's the assassin one?
He's the assassin one. Yeah, it's the most high risk, high reward. Everybody who's new to the game and plays him always messes it up and ends up killing themselves because you just get so trigger happy. But when you play him right and you wait until the very end when you're sure, you can like change the tide of the game with one single hit. And I've had games where it's like right at the end, there's only two people left, me and one Satanic, which is a guaranteed win for Satanic. But then you reveal yourself to be the vigilante and get that final kill, and the whole lobby just breaks down like, oh my god. Like I live for those moments.
Yeah, that's the dub. That's awesome. That's great.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Caesar.
You know, it's really interesting. You've been mentioning in terms of the social deduction game. I think everyone would agree that Among Us has really shaped that genre to be as popular as it is, especially in the recent times. But you've also mentioned a lot of the differences that you believe makes Castle of Blackwater build on top of that and make it more thrilling than the general loop of Among Us. I do want to ask, though, I'm sure you guys have really studied Among Us and how it became as successful as it is today. What lessons are you able to pull from that you guys will apply with Castle of Blackwater to ensure that that complexity doesn't become something that hinders Castles of Blackwater instead of actually improve it and really maybe hopefully blow it up even more than Among Us in the long term?
It's a great question. Of course, we can't say that we weren't inspired by Among Us. The fact that Among Us became such a sensation is one of the reasons why we were so interested in the genre. I think Among Us really showed that there is a wider market for social deduction, and we kind of hypothesized that that genre, that market, was underserved because we think Among Us is great for a little while, but we don't think that it's a great game in the long term to have that replayability. So obviously we did some research as well, and one of the biggest problems that games like Among Us has is that they are notoriously difficult to monetize. It probably won't surprise you that the majority of Among Us players are actually really young children who don't really tend to spend that much. And because Among Us isn't a hyper financialized game, like an optimized economy game like some mobile games would be, it actually does quite a bad job at turning their players into revenue. Now, Among Us kind of cheats that hypothesis because it reached such a scale that even though it wasn't effectively monetized, they still made a hell of a bunch of money. But our kind of goal is that with Castle of Blackwater is by trying to target a little bit of a mature audience by offering more strategy and complexity. You're also targeting a more monetizable audience. And then by adding in a lot of monetization strategies from mobile gaming, like, for example, a Wheel of Fortune or a rotating shop that, for example, Fortnite has, but also adding in more Web3 components. And this is really where we think Web3 is going to shine. When we think, how can Web3 add benefit to both us as a developer, which is increasing monetization, but also to players by adding ownership of items and a new avenue for having fun through speculation, we're very inspired by the Counter-Strike cosmetics model. You guys know that in Counter-Strike, you have these skins that go for loads and loads of money, and people love to speculate. And a big part of Counter-Strike success is that level of speculation. We think that by having some NFT-based cosmetics, not all cosmetics, right? And we'll touch on this later, but our Web3 thesis is entirely opt-in. But those that do want to opt in will see every cosmetic that is in NFT form will be limited edition and have scarcity by design. Everything will have a fixed supply from the day that we introduce it. And by you buying something that is like a mythical 100 will ever exist, you can kind of buy that opportunity to speculate and think like, hey, I like this cosmetic. I think in the future it's going to be worth more money or it's going to be high in demand. So I'm going to buy one now. And then 2 years from now, who knows what happens? And those are entirely new mechanics that Among Us was never able to touch on because they're so rooted in their Web2 audience. But we think that, learning from what they are able to achieve through simply being in the social deduction genre and having that level of virality and then adding extra layers of Web3 maturity to it, that we can really create a splash in the space.
While you're on the point of like what you guys are doing in Web3 and how that separates you, I do think that right now, at least, you guys are probably, if someone was to say social deduction game in Web3, go, they're going to say Castles of Blackwater. And so with that being you guys, but your goal obviously being to attract Web2 players. I know you guys are ramping up for the Steam launch. You're going to be on the App Store. Like you're going for traditional, regular gamers who don't necessarily care about crypto. I know your white paper mentions like, hey, the Web3 is going to be optional. It's opt-in in the background. We don't want that forced on Web2 players. How do you guys plan on balancing that approach of like Web 2 players versus Web 3 players, and maybe even like, I think your approach to getting those players, because player liquidity is obviously a problem in Web3. I mean, you guys are a game that like ideally is going to have like 14 people playing it at all times, right? And there's like 14 players in Web3 gaming right now. And so what does it look like to balance a game in both of those worlds?
So we definitely have the benefit of hindsight here. Initially, when we first started Castle of Blackwater, I'm not going to lie, our vision of what the Castle of Blackwater economy was going to be was very different to what it was today. We went in with, a kind of golden vision where we saw the kind of user base that Axie Infinity had, and we thought we could get similar kind of numbers just by being a Web3 game. What we've since come to realize now, 2 years down the line of Web3 games launching and failing and launching, is that the largest part of the Web3 user base is entirely incentivized by monetization, by the play to earn aspect. And I haven't yet seen a single game that can really pull off like the hardcore kind of play to earn that these players are looking at, whilst also remaining sustainable in the long term. For a long time, we had an economic theory that was intending to solve this, but this was very much rooted in the fact that we hypothesized that the Web3 play to earn players, in exchange for their earning, would still provide high quality play and provide that player liquidity. Although from our beta test, we have now learned that when offered financial incentives for play, people will do whatever they can to get those incentives with minimal effort.
Without
this
actually
means
playing.
AFKing in the lobby. This means building bots. And, we didn't want to spend our entire game development journey just trying to deal with bots and trying to overcome those challenges. So that's why we made the decision to completely cut the play to earn element and instead focus on other elements of blockchain that Web3 can provide. To add on to that, a big part of our considerations recently has been staying up to date with the guidelines from like Steam and App Store. We've always, especially as we're developing Castle Blackwater, and we're increasingly starting to realize the potential that it has as a genuinely fun game, at least people tell us all the time, it would be a shame to not give that kind of game the opportunity to go mainstream in a mainstream audience, right? As much as we love our Web3 launches like Hyperplay and Elixir, whatever, it'll be a very long time before they can reach the types of mass that Steam can. Even Epic Games Launcher, with the millions and billions that's been invested there, hasn't been able to come close to the numbers that Steam is pulling in. But in order to launch on Steam, you need to have a clean game. You can't have play to earn. You can't have crypto hard integrated. That's just going to cause issues. So what we've done is we've removed all of the hard-coded blockchain elements from the game itself. And we're going to be launching Castle of Blackwater as a Web2 standalone game on Steam, on iOS. People that don't care about Web3, and trust me, there are still a lot of people who don't give a shit about Web3. They just want to play a game.
Sadly, unfortunately.
Unfortunately for now, right? But it's up to us to educate and to kind of help shape that image. So those players are free to download the game. They won't run into any friction, no wallet needed, nothing, not even on the back end. They can just play the game. They can buy their skins as microtransactions. The only thing is, when they buy a skin, they won't be able to trade it or sell it. They'll just be stuck with it like the status quo is now. And some people will be fine with that. Others will try to find other ways or see what else is possible. What we're then doing is we're offering this Web3 opt-in site experience, but that's going to be integrated entirely through our website backend. So we have a website backend that is connected to our game backend, and our Web3 users are able to go to the website, connect their game account to their Web3 account, connect their wallet to that account. And we've built this system that constantly checks the wallet that you've connected to your game account. And whenever that wallet has Castle of Blackwater cosmetic NFTs or character NFTs, we'll credit your game account with those same NFTs. When you sell them, we can see that you sell them because it's all public, whatever. And then we'll take them away from you again. So in that way, we're kind of spoofing the Web3 experience. It's still like when it really comes down to it, it's still the same. You have the NFT in your wallet, therefore you get the game item, but it's not a direct hard-coded integration that's going to prevent other people from enjoying that game natively. And I don't want to say it's unique. I'm sure there are other games out there doing something similar, but it's the solution that we found after many months of testing and validating and speaking to Steam. And this is something we can get through. And hopefully we're not going to run into a situation where Web2 players will get turned off purely because, we're a Web3 game on the back end. I hope they can kind of see past that and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you're taking a game that was built with the ideals of like a perfect Web3 game, and then you're forced into the reality of like, oh, regular gaming doesn't like our ideals. And so how do we deal with having ideals that regular gaming is not willing to adopt yet, but we want to convince them? And that's the approach that you guys are taking as well. Let's get them to love the game first, and then maybe they'll start to love these other mechanics that actually do improve the gaming experience. Like if you're the kind of person that wants to collect your stuff, man, I have spent way too much money on Fortnite skins in like COVID era that I wish I just owned those so I could sell some of those off. You know, like there is that idea of Web3 actually making Web2 gaming better. And that's the hope, is that you guys can actually convince, even if it's a small portion of that player base, hey, this is better. Come join the 14 players that are in Web3 gaming. We really need more than that. As far as like you've mentioned taking out some of those mechanics, like realizing, hey, you know what, we're not going to be a straight up play to earn game because that's not going to exist in traditional gaming. They're not going to allow us to. How does your token, the COBE token, what's happening with that in regards to the game? I know there was like initially, is that this, there was earning mechanics with the gold, maybe with that. If you're removing that, what does that look like with the current economy? So you've got the skins that are going to be collectible and ownable on the blockchain in the back end. What else still exists in there, and how does it all work together?
So first of all, I like to call it the Kobe token because that just rolls off the tongue much cleaner
That's a lot
than
easier.
COBE. Yeah. Initially, we had a dual token economy, and there's like a whole complicated white paper, like sub white paper out there. It's still live. I can send you a link. It had like a very intricate economy using liquidity pools, and I think the theory there is still really great. It's just way too complex for what we're trying to achieve now with the mainstream audience. So we cut out that complexity, and we remain with the Kobe token, which of course we need to be able to reflect the value and the growth of the game as an ecosystem. Our current plan is that now we have this whole ecosystem of cosmetics playing around on the website. We're integrated with Sphere Marketplace from Merit Circle. And the Kobe token is going to be the primary currency that's going to be transacted with through these cosmetics. We've recently done integrations with Spark, which was bought up by Portal. So now they are Portal Pay. And we're probably going to continue that relationship, because what they allow you to do is that whenever somebody wants to buy a cosmetic, and we have that integration in the purchasing page, they can pay with whatever currency they want, or whatever currency we approve, which will be, you know, Ethereum, Beam, Merit Circle, whatever that we want, right? We'll make sure it's a whole list of them. And then as they pay in that, on the back end, we do a DEX swap transaction, and we make sure that a large portion of that transaction actually becomes buying pressure on the Kobe token. And in that essence, you're ensuring that every bit of economic activity that's happening around the cosmetics, which we expect it to be plentiful, because, you know, if the game is popular, if the cosmetics take off, there will be a lot of trading and speculating, kind of like, you know, a marketplace like OpenSea. And all of those trading fees will be payable in Kobe token. And whenever we do a native NFT drop, right, we'll do a rare drop, you got to buy it in Kobe token. So all of that price is going to be reflected. We're going to be recollecting the Kobe token. We're going to be burning a portion of that. And the whole idea of the Kobe token is that, you know, as the game grows and the success grows, that success should be reflected in the Kobe token.
I did want to ask a question when it comes to the idea of the cosmetics, because you mentioned someone who's just playing regularly, doesn't care about the crypto side of things, is able to just collect these cosmetics and keep them in their account. How does it work when it comes to they get something that's super high rarity, like a mythical or legendary item? Does that take away from the pool of someone who actually has that NFT? Will there be, like, if there's 100 mythic cosmetics on the blockchain, are any of those 100 going to be in game that are not tradable? Or is it 100 NFTs and then there's maybe like 10,000 more in people's actual account that maybe they're not going to be wanting to look for? How does that actually work?
Yeah, so this is one of the benefits of us having this dual-pronged approach. On the one hand, we have our Web2 cosmetics, which we can create at infinitum, and they're untradeable. And we're pretty much only using Web2 cosmetics as player progression incentives. So as you play and grow in the game, you'll unlock these Web2 cosmetics, which will be a little bit more default. But as soon as we get into like the rare and epic and mythical NFT-based cosmetics, you won't be able to earn them just by playing. You will always have to transact in them. And it's always going to be limited edition drops that we sell directly to you. And what you do with them afterwards, you can trade them, you can sell them, you can hold them. We leave that up to the player. And that also ensures that people aren't just playing to grind the game, but that they are playing because they enjoy it and they find value in the cosmetics. but those people that want to participate in the speculation have to cough up first, because I'm getting a little bit tired of an ecosystem where everyone is just constantly draining the economic value and trying to get the best bang for their buck. And I don't think that's where the space needs to go. Gaming should be about fun.
And a follow-up question to that, then once we get to that point where, hey, you have a lot of players who are enjoying the game, they're progressing their accounts, and now they see, hey, they're selling a super high cosmetic and it looks really cool. I want to go ahead and get that. Is it at that point where they're going to have to make the conscious decision of go to the website and start learning about the Web3 mechanics? How are you going to transition a player who is loving the game, has put a lot of hours in, sees that there's going to be a rare drop, wants to get in, but maybe doesn't know anything about crypto? How does that transaction go through to ensure that, hey, you get them on board because they really want this skin to begin with? But I feel like that's where a lot of people are still going to get turned off or maybe lost along the way, because it's a different experience from, hey, let me just plug in my credit card to Steam, or let me plug in my credit card to my Apple Pay account, buy the skin and then have it in my account, compared to going to a website, learning about blockchain, learning about portal pay and things like that, and then having to figure out how to get that connected to your account. How is that whole experience going to happen to ensure that it can reach that mass adoption that you're looking for?
It's a great question. We're gonna go through an experimental A/B testing phase to find the optimal way that we can actually transition people from the Web 2 to the Web 3. We have a lot of ideas, but we've definitely learned over time that ideas are pretty much worthless until you test them. So I don't want to speak in front of myself and say we're going to definitely do this, because I don't know yet. I know what we're going to try. Imagine things like, as a Web 2 user, when you buy one of the more expensive cosmetics in a Web 2 format, we might give you a slight little nudge and say like, hey, you just spent 20 euros or $20 on this cosmetic, but do you understand that this is locked to your account and you have no way to trade that in? Like, instead, have you considered, buying an NFT version of this and giving yourself that flexibility? And perhaps we'd even give the player an option to refund that purchase if they then get sent to the Web3 side of things in order to make an account. At the same time, I can already tell you for a fact that we're going to do whatever we can to simplify the friction of creating a blockchain wallet as much as possible. It's one of the reasons why we went with Beamchain as our blockchain partner, because through their Beam API and SDK, they actually allow you to do a lot of the wallet complexities on the back end without the user knowing. So when a user is on the website and they go to, they want to create an inventory, we could give them an option that says like, hey, do you just want us to make a wallet for you? And we'll give you can just store it on here. You don't have to worry about private keys and public keys and all that. Or do you want to take a minute to watch this video to learn about the benefits of actually being in control of that wallet yourself? So I'm a huge fan of this opt-in kind of solution and giving people flexibility and choice. And throughout the entire process, you can always choose, do you want the most simple way possible, knowing that there are certain risks involved? Or do you want to take the time to learn, and even later you can migrate your account, etc., etc. But it's going to be through a lot of rigorous testing that we're going to find out eventually what the best way forward is going to be.
Yeah, I totally like that, because I think that's after months and maybe years of this progression of talking about, hey, we're going to see cool games coming out. Well, hey, now in the last 6 to 9 months, we've really seen cool games starting to come out and launch and things like that. Now I feel like we're finally ready to have that next conversation. It's like, hey, now we're seeing really fun games. We're not seeing that 2021 craze of just white papers and hype and no actual product. Now we have real games like Castle of Blackwater ready to take that next step. And it's like, okay, now how are we going to have these conversations with Web2 players, get that mass adoption, and then transitioning them to understand the value of why owning your stuff actually can help them. And it's really exciting to me that, hey, maybe even though you don't have the exact answer, because you're right, you haven't tried it yet, so we don't know what works. We're already at that point where we're actually starting to think about these things, because that's where I feel like the next stepping stone for Web3 gaming is going to be.
Yeah.
After all these games launch, where do we go from there to actually make these things happen?
I'll give you another idea that we're toying with, right? So Steam is not inherently against NFTs. What their problem is they want to take their cut. They don't want you to have some kind of SDK integration that allows you to circumvent the Steam payment page so that they don't get the cut from the game that they're promoting to their audience. So one idea that we're toying with, and we're still talking to Steam about whether this will be allowed, but I would love for somebody who's interested in taking that transition to go through the Steam payment flow and buy an NFT, paying in fiat money through Steam payments. Sure, Steam will take their 30% cut, but then the user would then be redirected to the website and say like, hey, you've just paid for this in fiat and that's comfortable. Now go and check out your asset by the way, if you ever get tired of it, you can sell it for crypto. And at the point that the user wants to sell it for crypto, they become forced to kind of learn what it's all about, because that's how they kind of recoup their investment. And I'm a real big fan of that idea, but no promises just yet.
Hey, if you can figure out a way to get Steam on board with everything, even if Steam ends up making their own marketplace and allows NFT trading on there, I mean, you pretty much revolutionized the entire space for everyone else.
We're working on it. We're working on it. I'm still rubbing elbows.
Yeah, you guys become the ultimate winner at that point. Hey, while we're on the point of the NFTs, I'm curious, some examples. I know that you guys have mentioned that, hey, if I have like the standard skin that's not a digital asset, I can wear it in game. I don't own it. I can't sell it. But the other benefit is that there are some types of perks that are attached to the NFT ones. What do those perks look like? Like, why would I want to, just as a player? So maybe I'm not even looking at like flipping it right now because I really like playing the game. Is there any benefit to me owning the NFT version just as a player?
Yeah, so we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going to be allowed and what isn't going to be allowed. This once again comes into touch with the Steam guidelines and active discussions ongoing. But they want to make sure that we're not selling too much external stuff.
Pay to win outside. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, it would never really be pay to win. I'm a huge anti-pay to win guy. I don't want people to be able to buy like knowledge exploits just by spending money. I might change my mind a little bit. So one thing, and this is alpha. Nobody knows this. You guys are getting some alpha right here. This is all very fresh, but we're considering the idea of pets, right? NFT pets, which would be exclusive to the NFT front. And we would be able to give these pets like some unique little ability for themselves. It would be very light, but I was recently inspired when playing Stumble Guys, if you guys have ever played that. And in Stumble Guys, you now have abilities, and they kind of add a fun to it, and you kind of want to have one, but you're still able to win quite easily without them if you're just a good enough player. And that's kind of how I would want the pets to be. So I'm thinking like a certain pet that you can send to certain locations in the castle to act as like a warden, like a visibility warden.
That's cool.
Or another pet that you can just send off to go and do tasks, and he'll collect a little bit of XP for you, or collect ghost souls. Like those kinds of things, I think would be great little benefits to have.
You're buying the pet is increasing your fun, but not necessarily your win rate.
It might have a little bit of effect on your team's win rate, but I think in the end, if everybody has a pet, it would balance itself out to some degree. And we might even give everyone like a default pet just to make sure it's balanced. But just adding a little bit of that touch to it. Other than that, the NFT version, we're still toying with what we're allowed to do. Like I said, I think we're going to have to conclude that everything that we sell as an NFT, just from a cosmetic perspective, also needs to be available in the game itself. But that doesn't mean that we're not allowed to toy a little bit with the NFT version by giving it like an extra glow or an extra animation or a little bit of je ne sais quoi to kind of make it pop out a little bit. Just enough to make people see it and think, why doesn't my item do that? And then be triggered to kind of want to learn about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Man, that's I think as someone who just plays the games, right? I'm not developing a game. It's so interesting to hear the inside scoop of like what's happening, trying to actually actively bring a Web3 game to Web2 audiences. Like there's a whole different set of rules that you have to play inside.
Yeah, it's very much a gray line. And on the one hand, it's an extra challenge because it adds a whole lot of complexities to a game's backend, which is already complex, right? Instead of having a single backend, now we have two backends, one integrated with the Web3, one with the game, etc., etc. But on the other side, it's also very rewarding because in a way, you're kind of pioneering in a field that I truly believe in. And you know, I'd love to be the guy or be the team that kind of helps crack that puzzle. And well, you know, I think it's going to be more than just solving a single thing.
Yeah.
Just having put a couple of bricks in the eventual system that's going to be the solution, I'll take pride in that.
Yeah, well deserved. Go ahead, Caesar.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Web3, right? Because maybe you guys don't find the entire solution, but you guys help put a little bit of those pieces together. You take some inspiration from other games that are also trying to put pieces together, and collectively as a space, we figure out how to make that crack. Because at the end of the day, I think it would just help the entire space for anyone or everyone together to solve that problem. I did have a question for you, and you talked a little bit about sort of some of the lessons that you learned from a play to airdrop campaign and what things you would have done differently. And for any games that are maybe listening to this, or people from other communities that are seeing games just starting to announce their play to airdrop campaigns, what are some of the things that you would warn those games, or maybe you should be like, hey, just keep this in mind about certain things like that? Because we've seen that took the entire space out of the craze, and it was really good for some games. It brought some attention to games that maybe otherwise wouldn't have gotten that attention. But also we saw a lot of people taking advantage of those mechanics, going in FK, doing the bare minimum to try to get the most amount of those tokens as possible.
I mean, I think at this stage, if you're still going hard in on the play to airdrop meta, it's kind of dead right now. Like, it's kind of past. Right now, what I'm seeing is that all of that attention and hype is moved into Telegram mini games. So maybe you should consider pivoting to the new trend, because that's kind of what those things are, right? I mean, of course, we are also a part of that kind of Web3 hype cycle. And when we saw play to airdrop, we were in a good position to participate in that trend. And I think we timed it very well, and we got very fortunate with that timing. But now that that's passed, I wouldn't recommend other people to do a play to airdrop campaign, because even in the best of times, it's all very hype driven. It's all very much to kind of get like into the spotlight for a little while. But when you look at the actual conversion results and the player base that sticks around, it's just not worth the effort that you're giving away and the headaches that you have to overcome in trying to solve for the challenges and the security risks. It started off small, but as the airdrop campaign kind of gained scale and we were up to a couple thousand users, we noticed so many bots and AFK people that it was really starting to damage the experience that our actual authentic players had, right? Because there's nothing fun about a social deduction game when there's 3 of you in a lobby with 7 people who aren't playing the game. So in the end, it was doing us more harm than good, which meant we had to shut it down a little bit earlier than we wanted. And then we had to go through, and we said this from the beginning, and this is my advice if you're going to do play to airdrop: track everything, all the stats, all the data. We had on every single game, we were tracking in an individual level, like how many kills were people getting, how many tasks were people doing. And at the very end of the campaign, and we always said we were going to do this, but we ended up eliminating like 70% of the people who even came to play the campaign, because we had so much reliable data that said you were just AFKing, you weren't playing, you were just standing there. And that, like, for maybe like 48 hours, our Discord was flooded with Russian people and other languages just
so
swearing at us.
And you're like, dude, you didn't even do a single quest. Like, in weeks, you didn't do a quest. Come on.
Exactly. But people felt like they were entitled to a percentage of the airdrop just because they showed up and did the bare minimum, when we always said that wasn't going to be the case. So definitely not worth the headache to do that in a time where it isn't the hype anymore. I think you can get more hype in a Telegram minigame, but even that's going to pass. So already start looking for the next big thing. And then as soon as you've had your spotlight, go back to focusing on building a real game, because in the end, that's all that's going to matter.
I really like that. And at the end of the day, it always has to come back building the game that you wanted and that you envisioned in the first place. With that in mind, you guys are, like you mentioned, you are ramping up to sort of get your game on Steam, get your game on sort of at the Play stores and things like that. But right now you decided to launch on Hyperplay, and you talked a little bit about sort of the love that you have for the Web3 launchers, but also some of the things that are tend to be lacking. And I think that comes from like the mass adoption. There's not really a lot of players who are just downloading games on Hyperplay or Elixir and things like that. How has that experience been like? Are you guys using Hyperplay for their wallet integration, or is it something else that you guys found in Hyperplay that you're like, hey, this is going to be a good first step before we move on to other launchers?
Yeah, personally, I'm a big fan of Hyperplay and the kind of role that they play in the Web3 evolution and game development cycle. For us, eventually, we will be migrating to Steam, just because we're trying to attract a larger player base that just isn't there in Web3. But in the meantime, it's so beneficial to have like a little safe place where we can host our builds. I think Hyperplay works very well, very efficient, and they also do security checks on all the builds that we upload. You know, there's a lot of scams and hacks in Web3, and nobody wants to download an exe directly from your website. So having that kind of brand of Hyperplay launching the game, it creates a lot of trust, and it allows us to, you know, what we've been doing ever since we started this game, to have our weekly community game nights. Every week we'll at least do it once a week with our own community. We're always meeting up with other communities, and, you know, just telling people like, oh, it's live on Hyperplay, just creates a lower barrier to entry and prevents people from thinking like, oh, that's too risky for me, I'm not going to do that. So in that sense, Hyperplay has played a huge role in us helping shape the game in a community-driven approach. But I'll be very curious to see how they and every other Web3 launcher holds up, because I always go back to the Epic approach. But if a game and a company like Epic is unable to beat the Steam incumbent, I wonder how anybody else is going to do it, unless we get to a situation where Web3 becomes so overpowering and Steam just does not accept the transition that eventually they lose market position. But the economist in me would say they would change their mind long before it would ever hurt their bottom line.
Right, money talks.
Yeah. But one day, Gabe is going to pass on to the next world, and who knows what will then happen to Steam when it stops becoming a private company.
Yeah. Well, there we go. And I think you also mentioned the other thing that I was going to transition to, and is this idea of the game nights, right? Especially because right now you're just in Hamper Play. Before you launch to the other launchers, right now you want to get people on, get people trying it, getting feedback. What are these game nights looking like? I know you mentioned you have some in your own Discord. Are there any other game nights that people can look for or can look forward to try out the game yet if they haven't had the chance?
Yeah, so we do game nights every week. Anybody who wants to come and try the game, you should check out our Discord events tab. We have a community director, Leroy, who I'm sure you've met, who does a great job at keeping everything well managed. I see we have one coming up this Thursday with the Play NXG and the Beamcat community, which is a great community. Bound to have, maybe 40, 50 people. So we'll have multiple lobbies and a couple of new people as well. So a great opportunity to come and try the game and see if it's something that you like. We also always give NFTs away at the end of these games because we know Web3 gamers love their incentives. So we always raffle off a couple of free cosmetics, NFT based, always limited edition. So feel free to come and check it out if anybody wants to try it. And be sure to wishlist us on Steam as well.
And speaking of Steam, in the wish list, when does that look like? Steam, Apple Store, Google Play, regular Web2 gamers, what is your timeline for that?
Great. So we are doing a Steam launch first, just because it's easier. It helps us get to market quickly, and we want to test at a larger scale and refine the game design. So that's going to be Q1 of 2025, currently aiming for late February. We're signed up for the Steam Next Fest Festival, which is like an indie game up and coming thing where you can showcase your demo. So we're really hoping to use that as a kind of plank to get into a more Web2 audience. And following up the Steam launch, we're hoping to grow to a couple thousand players. I'm recently following a Web2 social deduction game called Lockdown Protocol, which is currently taking Twitch by storm. It was only released 2 months ago, currently at 10,000 active players on any average day. So I think that it's such a strong sign for social deduction games launching in general.
Yeah, there's still a want for it.
Yeah, exactly. So very excited about that launch and working together with, ever since we made this shift and we're becoming more Web2 approachable, we've also had a much easier time reaching out to and connecting with Web2 influencers and people who want to promote the game rather than just the Web3 version. So we're very excited to see what that's going to do. And then we are aiming for a mobile release before the end of next year, depending on how many things we need to solve and evolve before we feel we're ready for it. And we think that's when the real larger market is going to hit, because we all know that mobile. We all know that mobile is so much bigger these days, so we're very excited for that as well.
Now that you mentioned Lockdown Protocol, I think I can't believe I forgot to almost ask this question, but Lockdown Protocol is another one that's been hitting my timeline, not only on Instagram but on TikTok, and I think this idea of not only Among Us but Lockdown Protocol, any of these games that have social deduction are really, really good on social media. They do really well with content creation because you just see your friends reading on friends and lying to your friends and everyone's having a good time. How is Castle of Blackwater going to implement that idea of user-generated content? Because I think that's really what makes these games really popular, because you see them on your timeline, you see friends having fun, and it just makes you want to try these games out. How are you guys going to implement that as well? Because that adds to the virality of a game, being able to make content creation as easy as possible and getting people excited to actually do that for themselves.
I agree. So great question. You'll enjoy knowing that we've already started this, right? Right now, you can go and search Castle of Blackwater on TikTok, on Reddit, on YouTube, and you'll see us popping out everywhere. We're currently pre-launch, and we're very much in a phase where we're experimenting with different kinds of formats. You'll see our TikTok is all over the place. We'll try scripted videos, we'll try highlight clips. We're very much trying to see what kind of format sticks and what engages with people to get kind of a playbook of how to create the best Castle of Blackwater content. By the time we launch, of course, we have a significant market budget available to work with influencers and kind of force that initial UGC. But I think this is going to be another benefit that the Kobe token provides, because, of course, we have a little marketing pool that we like to keep. And we would look forward to having kind of like bug bounties and offering people to create content which is engaging And as it reaches certain benchmarks, so we do kind of like tournaments, who can get the most engagement on content within a certain time frame, that's when we would start paying out. And that's very different from play to earn, right? Because when you play to earn, you play, you earn, there's no value creation. But when you do promote to earn, it becomes like a marketing spend, and that makes a lot of sense. So I'm still very bullish on financial incentives when it comes to marketing and user acquisition, and we're definitely going to be applying those there, but not the play to earn stuff.
Yeah, and on that bug bounty concept, I mean, then you get a lot more than just creators too, because you've got people that just love playing your game, and now they have a chance to like, ooh, I can win some money with this game that I already play if I just make my normal gameplay look awesome and look fun and entice people and go viral on TikTok. Anyone can go viral on TikTok.
And that's the beauty. Anyone can go viral on TikTok. You don't need to be a big influencer. You just need to maybe get lucky and do a lot of clips. And one day you're going to get a clip that takes off, and you're going to be walking away with a couple $100 in Kobe token, and you're going to feel great about it. And that's a big part of the Web3 gaming revolution I see before me. It's kind of that.
That's fantastic. I dig that.
Democratizing of UGC and esports as well.
Which is the thesis of Web3, right? It's this idea that like the game or the product or the project, it belongs to the people, and the people want a piece of the puzzle, and they want to be a part of building that. And so if you let them be a part of building that with content, with whatever else, yeah, man, that's the win. You've tapped into the heart of this, why we're all here in the first place. I love it. Final question. After this episode, we'll have links where people should go to find you guys. What are you going to go do as a team, as a studio? What are you working on right now? What features are you trying to get the kinks out that people could look forward to, that they should be excited about? What is in the works for Castle of Blackwater?
Okay, so I'll start with the boring stuff, which is that we're doing a lot of refactoring and improving and just increasing the consistency and reducing bugs and polishing and all that stuff. On the more exciting front, for the past 2 years, we've been building a game loop, if you will, and we've constantly been iterating and changing and balancing. And we've now come to a point where, from a game design perspective, we are very, very happy with what we've got. It used to be after every game session, people would write feedback and say like, oh, this character sucks, or that should be better. But now nobody does that anymore. So we're very confident in the core game loop. But a game that launches is a lot more than just a core gameplay loop. You guys take it from a game builder. I used to be a gamer, still a gamer. Now I'm a game builder. You look at games a whole different way. But there are like back-end systems, progression systems, social features, the shop, the inventory mechanic, so many systems that need to be built and that need to coincide with each other. That's our biggest focus right now. And we hope to be releasing a new stability build within the next week or two. And then we at least hope before the end of this year to have a first version out where people can start experimenting with like a light version of the shop. Everything's going to be free in that shop. It's just to test things out. Yeah. So if you ever want all of the Castle of Blackwater cosmetics, come and try it out soon, because temporarily you will get everything for free. We'll probably take that away again. Everything's going to be reset eventually. But we're very much testing like buying stuff and getting it in your inventory. And we have emotes as well, which are like little dances and animations, and making sure that works well. So that's exactly what we're focused on now. And another big thing is a first-time user experience. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've had in the past few months is from new people who jump into the game and they get a bit confused. We have an extensive wiki out there. I mean, you guys know that a game like Town of Salem or Mafia, it just takes a little bit of learning. It has a curve. So what we've decided to build is this very interactive learning experience where you kind of spawn in the castle, you get a narrator, you get little boxes, your UI.
And you already have the narrator for like the 5-step page when you first log in, but now it's going to be like for every piece of the game.
And it's going to be an interactive experience. It's not just a tutorial. It's going to be like playing through and like playing a mini game. It's going to be quite scripted in a way, but it's going to be a very engaging way to learn the rules. And we think that's going to make the difference between people giving the game like a proper chance rather than just trying it, not understanding it, and deleting it again.
Phenomenal, man. What I am hearing is that things are cooking at Castle of Blackwater. That you guys, you took the success of a play to airdrop campaign, you took the success of all of that hype, and you've essentially taken your own advice that you were giving to developers out there. And now it's time to build the really good game that can succeed and stand on its own 2 legs. And that's where you guys are at, is getting that ready for a big global launch. Man, that's awesome. I think
thank you.
I would love to see, I mean, I have these conversations because I would love to see any Web3 game break out. But I do think there's like the idea of a social deduction one, Caesar hit it on the head, that like those games go so viral everywhere. I think anyone can remember when Among Us went viral. Why did it happen?
Yeah.
It wasn't because a bunch of random people started playing it. It's because a bunch of Twitch streamers stumbled upon it during COVID, and it blew up. And then everyone wanted to play it because they thought that looks funny. And so if you guys can, I don't know, man, I think there is an argument to be made that a social deduction game could be one of those real early breakouts of Web3 gaming. So hopefully
you made it,
you guys.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm there
I know.
for it.
You're
we're doing whatever we
can.
Yeah,
it's hard to. Yeah. Awesome, man. Hey, where can people find you right now? What link should they click on? Where should they go to go hang out with the Castle of Blackwater crew, play your games, whatever it is, ask questions?
It's the usual. Find us on Discord. I mean, I'm personally active on Discord every single day. If you ask a question, I'm coming to answer that myself, just because I find it so important to be in touch with the community. We're on Twitter at Blackwater_town. Discord, I said. We're on Telegram. And most importantly, just go and wishlist the game on Steam so that you get a notification when we go live, because we will be doing some week 1 promotions where people will be able to get limited edition NFTs just for showing up and playing in that first week and like connecting your wallet and linking your account as like an initial push. So if you want to be there for that, you got to make sure to be wishlisted, and I look forward to seeing you in one of our game nights.
I like that, because I just wishlisted it myself. So there we go.
Let's go.
Caesar is on it already. Beautiful, man. Thank you so much for joining us, Jojo. Go show some love to these guys. And hey, if you're not playing yet, go download it on Hyperplay. It was really easy. It is a seamless experience if you've used crypto before. So go download it. Join us in a game night. Maybe go kill Caesar sometime. We will see you next time on 100X.